Hello. So today has turned into a fun day. I didn't show this yesterday, but my printer is starting to run out of ink, and when I tried to print off today's slides, it hasn't really worked. So I thought, how can I do this? How can I deliver the same level that I always try and deliver? Let's see if that works better. That doesn't work very well. Ooh, but that's strobing now. That seems okay. So, what I thought I'd do was I would do it this way. I'm going to go through the slides with you, and it's going to be recorded into the little video sections, which are going to be premiered this evening. I will answer questions, comments on Twitter and all those sort of things. So I'll be still answering stuff. And when I do that, apart from making the screen flicker, what I will then have, hopefully, if I have managed to get it all to work right, is the lovely slide will appear on your screen for 5 seconds. So you can pause it, have a look around it, and then I will talk it through. So you'll always see the slide before I start talking about it. Okay? Hopefully this works, and thank you for bearing with me. I also wanted to start off by saying a big thank you to everyone who's subscribed, who's followed. As I said, you have really made this very, very far bigger than I thought it was going to be. Honestly, I've put videos on here as part of the history stuff I did on Twitter in the past, and it was meant as a resource for people to go back to and be able to look at and that sort of thing. It wasn't really for me to use in terms of actually doing stuff. Try and make that stop that flickering. And so it's been rather fun. The refresh rate isn't matching the camera for some reason. We'll try our best. And thank you. As I said, I still don't have my webcam. It still hasn't arrived. So you're all bearing with me as I do a very Heath Robinson approach. Thank you for doing so, and thank you for listening. Now, this is going to be divided up into several parts, because I realise if it's not live, I might as well divide it up into parts to make it easier for you to watch rather than it being a 2-hour chunk. So, wish me luck. Thank you again for taking part. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again to subscribing. For those who become patrons, all that stuff, it's really, really kind of you. Again, today, the major source I'm using is this as my spine guide, as my main guide. That's the British warship design. But I've looked at other sources and I've used other books as well. So you're going to see a bit of stuff from all the old places. None of the graphics are my own work. If they're plans, they're from in here. If they're pictures, they're what I found doing a Google search. I'm just not that good an artist. I wish I was, but I'm not. So, gonna have a conversation with my laptop's refresh rate at some point. Let's see. So, now. Hang on, I forgot something. Right, so hopefully you've now seen the slide. Let's talk through it. I forgot it the first time, didn't I? So the traditional perspective of the interwar years, as I discussed yesterday when I did the landing craft one, is that nothing happens. Nothing happens. It's not true at all. But I do have to point out that when it comes to landing ships, honestly, nothing does happen. Okay? There are lots of conversion plans in place that they can build from, for turning them into merchant cruisers, for using them even as troop ships. These are all things which are included. But there's very little plans for building what will become the huge amphibious fleet as we understand it to this day. And that's a big point to remember. Amphibious warfare is as much about the ships as it is about the craft, and much about all those things as it is about the people you're putting ashore. If you want to have a really successful amphibious force, you do need the whole combined team. And it is the big drawback, it's the big limitation. I can say, of course, the Japanese had a couple of ships and that's lovely. But honestly, they weren't that massive or that impressive either. The Royal Navy seriously has nothing. The US Navy has nothing because they haven't needed it. Yes, you've got landing craft coming up, but they're being hoisted on conventional merchant ships, which are taken up for the purposes. One of the limitations of landing craft, as we discussed yesterday, was that they were supposed to go on a merchant ship's davits. So, it's the next one. Indian exercises. Now, why have I brought this up again? Because all the things that are going on here, what interested me when I was looking through it is the reference to specialist shipping isn't there because it's going ahead quite successfully without it. So this is the thing. In the exercises they're doing, which are rather small scale, and let's be honest, not under much threat of enemy attack, it's all under exercise rules and all those things, you don't need the big amphibious shipping. You do need the craft for getting people to shore. That is a big thing. So, next slide. Group 1, ships for infantry and landing craft. And this is what this part is all going to be about. Ships and landing craft. Well, infantry, basically. So we have, these are the definitions that they have listed, okay? I'm going through them, but I have got HMS Empire Battle Axe there, which I would say is a landing ship infantry large, but other people try and define differently. And it's a whole subject of debate. It's something which I'm going to do a lot more investigation into. As I said, I'm doing this as part of the amphibious warfare and the landing ship. This has not been my area of research. I'm more, when it comes to amphibious warfare, Falklands War is more my area than World War II. But I've looked into this because of my dad, because of me saying I was going to do it, and because it's a really interesting area. But I have to admit, there are some areas which I'm going to have to do further research on. I'm going to really enjoy and going to come back to later times to share this with you. Landing ship infantry medium. They're my favourites. You'll find out why shortly. Landing ship infantry small. Well, if you have large or medium, I suppose you can have to have small. And landing ship infantry hand hoisting. Oh, you have no. It's just so sad. Anyway, between 37 to 40 ships fit in this category. And by the way, that stat I got at after reading 4 different books. I'm not even sure if the Royal Navy's quite sure what ships fit in what category in this one. Because also some ships do evolve. They do flip between different categories, and they're in one category at one time, and they're in another category, or they're used for something else another time. And you have some ships which are used for this one so often. And so it's a massively complicated organism going on here. So, here are what are the most favourites. And you thought I'd forgotten it, hadn't you? Nope. So, it's HMS Glenroy is pictured, and Bengal and HMS Gleneen. Now, they are colossal. They are the really big ships. They are critical because they carry quite so many. Now, as if you're reading the plan, you can see, and please don't take this the wrong way, but rather than turn my back to you and read the plan off this, I've got the book out, so I've got the book plan. You'll notice how all the landing craft assault are stacked, and that's what she's carrying. she's carrying all these LCAs. She carries very few LCMs in comparison to the bigger landing crafts, the ones that are really, really long. But she carries masses, absolutely masses of these landing craft assault. She carries usually 12 of them and 2 derrick hoisted LCMs. Although I can see on the plans for 3, so who knows? Maybe they managed to fit in a 3rd one. And I can see a lot more plans for LCAs. But you know, this is the joy. The plan I've got is for the Glen class, and the stats I'm reading off here are also technically for the Glen class. I think what happens is they have the first conversion. So the first conversion has a few, and then slowly they add on more. And the reason they can add on more is this. Basically, the Dvits, they start to fit to them. They allow you to stack up more landing craft auxiliary and do all sorts of things with it. So it allows you to carry far more assault. Now, these ships are good because they have own anti-aircraft guns. They have 3 twin 4-inch mounts and all sorts of machine guns and cannon sitting up festooning them. So they're really quite well armed. Okay, they are self-sufficient, but most importantly, they can carry over 1,000 soldiers. They'll be carrying landing craft crews, 12 officers, 220 men. Ship's company, 28 officers, and 263 men. Think about that. The total for a ship is stacking up well close to... I just said well close. I do apologise. Been watching too many bad comedies. Stacking up to very nearly 1,700 people, personnel aboard them. So they are a major exercise to build and put in sea. And a lot of fuel. I don't know why. Suddenly I'm recording this and suddenly I have to sneeze. Why? Now, they are pretty critical little ships. I'm using metal very wrong here. They're massive ships. They're overall 507 feet long and 66 feet wide. They displace nearly 10,000 tons. And their 12,000 horsepower gives them a range, and the amount of fuel they carry gives them a range of 15,000 miles at 14 knots. 15,000 miles at 14 knots. These ships are great, but they're far bigger than you need for operating off the coast of Normandy. So when they're ordered, why are they ordered? You don't need this ship to operate off the coast of Normandy. You don't need this ship to invade France. It's got a range of 15,000 miles at 14 knots. It's 8,000 miles to the Falkland Islands from the United Kingdom. This can get all the way down to the Falkland Islands and most of the way back. Going at 14 knots. Why? Well, you need these ships if you're going to start fighting a global war. One of the interesting things about the British plans, once they start getting into the war going on, once they start looking at, we are going to need these ships, and these are ordered, the first LSI is asked for in April 1940. Once you start looking at we're going to need these ships, you start thinking, why are we needing these ships? Well, we're needing them to fight a global war. And the reason we're going to fight a global war is in April 1940, they are starting to realise they are going to be fighting a global war. that there is going to be fighting taking place in far more places than just Europe. And even if it's not just in Europe, that can encompass the whole Mediterranean. They don't trust Italy. Italy might not have joined the war yet, but they weren't trusting her. And what's happening in April 1940? Norway. Norway's going on. The war is expanding. And the British government is getting ready for it. Now, next one. Yep, it's my favourites. And actually, it's two of my favourites up there. Landing Ship Infantry Medium. Why do I like the Landing Ship Infantry Mediums? Because if anything's designed for supporting a long-range commando operation, then like these things, I don't know what is. They have actual Dvits which can take the LCMs. So those bigger landing craft. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about when I'm talking about LCMs and LCAs, please go look at the other video which was on, which there should be a link to appearing now up the top, if I've put it in correctly. And that has got all about the landing craft. I was originally going to do a landing craft and landing ship video, but it's just too much. There's too much information. You can't do it as just one. You need to do it, break it up, and this one, thanks to no working printer, has had to be broken up into little videos. Hope you enjoyed them. So, they are smaller, but their top speed is 22 knots. They can carry 350 soldiers, plus 22 officers, so yeah, nearly best part of 400. Once you add on landing crews, ship's crews, and ship's complements, you're looking at the best part of 650 people aboard. Okay, nowhere near the landing ship large, but still pretty impressive. And it's for commando operations. So they can dispense their LCMs down Dvits. They carry LCAs on Dvits. So you're quickly getting into the water. And this is critical. The reason it's critical is this operation. Operation Claymore, the first commando raid. Now, I know I've already talked about this when I was talking about landing craft, but you need to understand that it's not just the landing craft which are critical. The reason they have to take HMS Legion with them is to provide the air defense for these ships. Because unlike the landing ship infantry larges, they don't have their own 4-inch high angle and AA guns. They need the AA defense. They need the protection of the destroyers. But also, without these and their speed to keep up with the destroyers, that operation wouldn't have been possible. And without their ability to carry in the landing craft motorized these big LCMs that really have the range and have the speed, then things would not have been as viable as they were. You know, this whole operation is a great operation where you have the right destroyers, you have the right commandos, you have the right ships, and you have the right landing craft. And it all comes together. And this is what we have to think about now in the UK when people ask me, why do I study history? Why am I talking about this stuff? Well, A, it's really cool history. B, Operation Claymore is one of those stories which does not get discussed anywhere near enough, and longer term I do plan on doing a whole video about Operation Claymore, which is why I am skipping over stuff, because that would spoil my longer term fun. But C, look at what the British are talking about in terms of their Marines and the future of them, and the ships we're looking at and the formations we're looking at and what we're looking at them doing. You know, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a force which is the same size as what an LSIM carried. We're looking at those capabilities. We have to look at what they get brought to the party. Right. So, next one. The landing ship infantry. Small. They're so pretty. Strange enough, they could carry out pretty much the same number of personnel as the landing ship infantry medium. But, in fact, more in some of their cases. But the big problem for them was they had a lower top speed, far less horsepower, they were more cramped, and they could carry a lot less in terms of their facilities. They were carrying 8 LCAs, which you can turn around and go, well, that's the same number of landing craft, you know. Prince Baldwin carries the same number of landing craft as Princess Beatrix. They do. But Princess Beatrix's are 2 LCMs and 6 LCAs, and Prince Baldwin's are 8 LCAs. There is a difference in those. There is a difference in the capability it brings. And there is a difference in what they provide for your fleet. Most importantly, what are all these ships? They're all converted ferries. Well, barring the Glen classes and the sort of, once you're talking about the smalls and the mediums, they are converted ferries. The LSSILs, they're far bigger merchant ships. I wouldn't call them cruise liners, but certainly they're of the larger variety of merchant ship. But the mediums and the smalls, they're converted ferries for the most part. So you've got a ready-made ship and you're converting it. They're not custom builds. But as the author of this particular chapter in this book makes a point, none of the types developed was perhaps entirely satisfactory as seen in the light of experience, but on the other hand, no type failed and no ship was ever given up by combined operations after they had acquired her. Yeah, you don't give back something that works. So, landing ship infantry hand hoisting. That is exactly what it says and exactly what it means. Hand hoisting. Sometimes I'm reading history and you get an idea just how desperate a situation was. They were so short of amphibious shipping. They needed it so much for the operations they were planning and so much what was going to happen that they were taking ships which were hand hoisting, which were manpower to get the Dvits to work, to get the landing craft, the LCAs, up and down. It worked though. They're not particularly large. I wouldn't call them particularly great. But they work. And again, it's much the same number of troops. Much the same number as the medium and the small landing craft. Although, let's be honest, it was not particularly comfortable. The thing about landing ship infantry is as the war goes on, they increase. They get bigger and bigger. The requirements on them get more and more and more. The sophistication required to support the personnel aboard is more and more and more, because they have vehicles, they have things they need to take with them. And at a certain point, you need more than just these. So, now quickly show you what we're going to be looking at in the next video. Yep, it's ships for landing craft. So I'll be looking at a landing ship stern chute, landing ship gantry, landing ship dock, which has an interesting history, and a landing ship carrier. So, hope you've all enjoyed this. I'm going to be ending and beginning these videos, as you've seen, with a little bit of visitation from my railway. And the next video should flash up in the end screen. Take care, and hope to join you. I hope you join me again in a couple of minutes. Well, next. Chat. Thank you for watching.